Welcome. This is Astrology Insight Now, a weekly forecast program with astrology and other ways to help you make the most of your week and to heighten confidence for daily life. It's run by Pamela Cuccinell, that's me, the astrologer, and I invite you to find out more about my work at insightoasis.com. I look forward to your joining us every week. Please share with your friends, and here we go.
August 10th, 2026. So this is an eclipse week, and let's reflect and look at how we can take advantage of when things ignite at that spark of the new moon with the eclipse. Monday, we're basically in the dark of moon cycle. So this period is we are going towards that new moon. The couple of days before the new moon is a period of ideally reflection. We make decisions on what we're going to carry into the next lunar cycle. That means the things that we're aiming to accomplish, continue work on, finally decide that we're rebooting, and also the things that we're going to shelve or decide, no, that's just not happening at this point in time or ever in my lifetime. So Monday and Tuesday can be days of decision or simply listening. One thing I love about this period in the dark of moon is I always think of the goddess Hecate. Hecate, very old goddess energy. She was the midwife of both birth and death. And so she stood at the portals of where we begin and where we end. And when we think about that at the end of every lunar cycle, we're in this period, it can be referred to as coming through the birth canal before, the new idea or the concept or the baby gets born. And at that point in time, it's very exciting because we're leaning towards something that we want to initiate, take off with, give new perspective to. But on the other hand, we are leaving behind everything that passed before. And so it's very useful to take a pause at this dark of moon period and really consider, where am I putting my energy over the next couple of weeks once that new moon kicks off? And what is just kind of pulling me back, sort of like if you've been in the ocean and you feel that pull that's kind of pushing you back into the shore, or very, very challenging when it's pushing you out to sea. It's do you want to be in that space? Where do you want to be? And so it can be a period, these couple of days, when we make conscious or even unconscious decisions, what we're going to put our energy into and what just is pulling us back. So Monday, the moon is void of course basically all day. And what that means is the moon is not making a geometric aspect to another sign before another planet, heavenly body, before it changes sign. So we have that moon in the sign of Cancer that's just kind of, it's moving, but it's not connecting to anything else. Now, when the moon is in Cancer and it's void of course, it's a sign that is fairly comfortable with this because the sign of Cancer, well, is totally okay often with kind of chilling, being close to home, the harbor, doing what needs to be done to take care of self. And what comforts, nurtures. And these are really good concepts to implement before we move in to higher energy, like yang out there going. So I think it's a very restorative day. Ideally, that's how we can spend it. I mean, depending on your work calendar or what you've got going on, that may not be available to you. So if you can modify or just keep in mind, super, super important, paying attention to when your body needs meals and rest. So that's a great way to supply the fuel necessary as we move into more decision-making days. Now, the 11th, and the times they give are Eastern time zone, so you may have to adjust depending on where you live. The 11th, the moon enters Leo at 4:38 a.m. So now it's in the sign that is moving towards that new moon eclipse, solar eclipse, that's going to happen in a relatively short period of time. But all day, that moon is in Leo, and this is a well aspected solar eclipse. Now, I should add, eclipses are, well, they're volatile energy. They ignite, they often gives us indications of something that is valuable to look at. So it could be a dream, it could be a symbolic reference where you could think of somebody you haven't thought about in a long time. You could recognize, oh, there's a book that I read when I was 18 years old, and maybe I should revisit that. I mean, there are things that come up. If the eclipse is actually triggering or touching something in your personal horoscope, it's at 20 degrees Leo, 2 minutes. So if you have 20 degrees in any sign in your horoscope, it's possible you're getting a little jab, a little recognition from what's going on with things happening in the sky. We are going to continue to see big movements, fast changes as we continue through this year, because the eclipses and things that are happening in the sky are definitely continuing to trigger, be catalysts and openings for transformation change. And especially when they ignite or touch certain world leaders or countries that get jazzed or touched by this. And as we know, there's a lot of powder keg energy in the world right now, and certain people in governmental power are making decisions that have an effect for not only people in their country, but other countries as well. So in the United States is being run by an eclipse president, and a president who was born at an eclipse. So always when eclipses happen, by their nature and volatility, Donald Trump is certainly apt to make some sort of what seems to be a sudden decision or implement something. Of course, one could say that it's just the way he operates, but I certainly would expect some sort of activity this week. But for the rest of us who are in as much power and control as we are with our own decision making, as we come to this eclipse, this new moon point, it is a tremendous time to think about how you're going to focus your creative energy, however you want to use that. And it's so much to do with expression of personal self. And what I mean by that is Leo is the sign that's linked to, well, the fifth house, the divine child. When I use that phrase, I mean that each one of us is born with light and potential. We're here to bring something into the world. It may be soft, not that impactful. It may be very impactful, but each one of us, it's a ripple effect. Each one of us makes something happen in this world by how we interrelate, the decisions we make, what we may contribute or decide not to contribute. And so when we have this kind of new moon in Leo energy, but especially with the solar eclipse, that that return, that kind of recognition of self potential is there. And it doesn't have to be any like dynamic big show. I mean, for some of us, absolutely it is, because that's the way certain people express and be in the world. But for others, it's a softer energy. It's a softer light. Yeah, it might be, depending on who you are, it might be this big bonfire, hey, look at me, or it might be just a soft little flicker of a firefly. But get into your light. Think about, what is it I want to express, share, be, give energy to as we go through this lunar cycle. And the solar eclipse happens exactly at 1:37 p.m. Eastern Time on Wednesday, the 12th, after which the moon is void of course. Now, the moon void of course in Leo it's a different energetic feeling than when I talked about Monday when it was in the sign of Cancer. On Wednesday, we might actually feel, after that buildup for that solar eclipse, we might actually feel either tired or not quite directed, or a lot of conversation or people going back and forth, and nothing really takes form or shape. That's all totally fine. Conventional wisdom in astrology with a solar eclipse, new moon, actually says it's really kind of ideal not to kind of kick off the new project idea, whatever it is you are focusing on during that lunar cycle, on the first day or so, or actually a couple of days, depending on the aspects of that new moon. It's better to kind of feed the flame, or let it get a slow energy. I like to think of, when we're first starting a fire or a flame in a campfire or fireplace. It's that low little fire. You want to see it ignite. If you end up with this big flame initially, it may not develop the integrity to really let that log burn, because it's just gone off really quick. It's ignited all the bark or the very flammable stuff, and then it doesn't have the tenacity to really let that log or flame really build or burn. So the next couple of days, you want to focus on, how do I build, create a good structure, make sure I can sustain whatever this idea concept is that um, I want to focus on. And especially when the moon is void, of course, it's fine to gather material, share ideas, but kind of put things a place where you can revisit before you actually make a commitment, because commitments made during a void of course moon don't usually stick. The moon enters the sign of Virgo at 6:18 a.m. on the 13th. And at that point in time, it is building towards something that can change. So basically, a good way to use this day is to work on routines or things that you've already pre-planned and know that things may change. The last picture in the sky before the moon changes sign is in Uranus, is with Uranus, and Uranus is the planet that's represented uh, for change, revolution, freedom, individual expression. So the best made plans, which Virgos certainly are good at doing, can change. And one great thing about Virgo energy is that it's an earth sign, but it's mutable earth. So I think of Virgo as, the soil, the rich soil that is easy to, it's not loose or sand, but it's easy to move to plant the seed or for when the seed is starting to create roots or move into a stem. It's giving, it allows that movement of growth. So that's actually super for having a Uranus moment where, oh, things change, no, that venue is not available, or um, the lights went out because of a thunderstorm or something occurred that what was planned can't really come to fruition. And the moon goes void, of course, this day at 3:24 p.m., after which late afternoon into evening it's void. So know when you're doing whatever it is you're doing on Thursday the 13th that things might change, even things that you've got, wrapped up and finished. You might find, oh, that didn't go quite the way I thought it would, or I, it wasn't received the way that I had intended. And it's not that you can't adapt. The important thing to keep in mind when the moon is in Virgo is you want to allow for whatever the growth is. Another picture I get when I think of Virgo and Uranus is, let's say, you've planted out your garden in the soil. When you think about how the ancients, pre having fire, or the kinds of nutrients that would enrich the earth, actually, because um, fire does re-enrich the earth. It can be devastating, certainly, but in ancient times, a fire would occur, or actually, once the ancients had a little more control of fire, they would slash and burn. I mean, that was the way it's still done in certain countries. They would let everything go to earth, and then they'd light the reeds or the old plants to enrich the soil. So Uranus, I think of lightning coming in, something electrical storms and suddenly planted, like going into the earth with the electricity and basically enriching the loam. So these sudden, like, ideas, revelations, epiphanies, upsets can actually steer us in new directions that can give us leaps where we move from point A to point F because we've been able to make this jump, but only if we have the adaptability and the acceptance to jump to wherever the next landing is. So keep that in mind. The other thing to keep in mind is as we approach midday, mid-afternoon, you want to make sure you know where you are in space, as I always say, because when Uranus is engaged, we are not necessarily paying attention to where we are. We are in our heads or in the conversation or suddenly derailed, and you need to pay attention to where you are in space. So when we get to Friday, we have a void of course day, 24 hours. It's void of course in the sign of Virgo all day. And I think the best way to use these long void of courses, especially with, in this case, the moon in Virgo, is to work on things you already have happening. Don't reinvent something, don't decide you're going to create a new thought or idea, jot it down. Definitely plan it, but don't start it because during void of course time, it is not well aspected for follow through. Now that happens when we get to Saturday. And Saturday, Sunday, these are the deep, supportive days to totally run with that new moon energy. And it starts at 10:20 a.m. on Saturday the 15th. The moon enters Libra, and it's in Libra through Sunday the 16th into Monday. So we definitely want to be kicking off, having the conversations, focusing on whatever that creative idea, the engaged play, the full expression of how we want to dance with transformation and change. And it can just be about restorative fun and play to set you up for feeling very invigorated about how you continue to move into whatever it is that you're creating, making happen, share. And Leo, and again, at this point in time, we're in Libra energy over the weekend, but the Leo new moon solar eclipse is about, it is about self-expression, but being seen and recognized. And so not all of us are going to want to be on center stage and do that. I mean, we all have roles to play. The question is, what is the role that you want to play that maybe you haven't had time for or haven't been able to give enough energy or focus on? Because that role, even if it's just the beginnings of paying attention to it, that role is speaking to you and saying, look at what I did. Hey, hey, mom. Hey, teacher. Hey, best friend. Look at what I can do. It's childlike, but it's that childlike desire to express that can be within us well into our 90s. And it's that excitement of wanting to share, engage, and celebrate something that you have been able to do. And as I said, it may be small, or it may be, woof, I've got this amazing concept, and I've got to find a team to get it off the ground. And that's the energy of the Libra moon weekend, because it can be very much about, hey, what do you think about this? And it may just be a statement or something that you're working with or bringing to, where it's a group of people, a family, uh, something that you're bringing your ideas, your enthusiasm, and your contribution to. And it doesn't have to be extroverted, but it does really help to show up and shine, because it's difficult at times for the universe to engage us if we're in a place where we're not engaged and sharing. So it's a good weekend to make those connections, whether you do it in an online capacity or you're out involved in community, where however you bring your fuel to the fire of something that you want to bring more light and attention to, feel so much in your heart. Remember, Leo is about heart and courage. And whether you're a cowardly lion or someone who's very comfortable strutting across the stage, it's so valuable to share your gift. We each have one.
You have been listening to Astrology Insight Now. Please share with your friends, and if you'd like to make a donation, you can do so at astrologyinsightnow.com. Have a stellar week, and we hope to see you next time.